Hello, and welcome to the Healing Half. My name is Mickey Spear. We're joined by the wonderful Cheryl Spalding, who I'll get to in just a moment. And together, we are going to be doing a quick show for you guys tonight. We're on, every single week, the Healing Half takes about 30 minutes or less to help learn how we can address our own wounds, as well as help others with theirs. And I cannot wait for tonight's topic about dementia and caregiving, because these are two things that we need to talk about more as a culture. And we've got someone who unfortunately knows a lot about that with us tonight. But before we jump to who Cheryl is, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself for those of you who haven't met me yet. So if you are here watching from anywhere, whether you're watching it live or as a replay, mention it in the comments that you're here. Cheryl and I would love to see that you guys are watching. So my name is Mickey Spear. I went to the same church as Cheryl growing up in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. That's how we know each other. I lost my mom to cancer when I was 13 years old, and I spent the better part of a decade pretending I was fine, not letting people in, keeping them at arm's length away, and really trying to convince myself and the world that I didn't need any help and that I truly was fine. I was a normal kid, and obviously that didn't work out super great. So eventually various things started to crumble all around me, and I would realize at that point that I finally needed to get some help. So through lots of counseling and lots of processing, I finally got to the spot where I realized it is so much sweeter on the other side once you process and go through those hard conversations with yourself. But it's hard to do that. So I just wanted to start a show where we get to every week quickly pause, dive into a topic, and if it relates to us, awesome. Hopefully that offers some healing. But then hopefully we can learn things that help us allow to be better friends to other people. So that's the Healing Half. I'm so glad you are here. And if you are not on my email list yet, I'll make sure it goes into the comments section, but just head over to mickyspear.com. Jump on my email list. You'll get one email only from me a week, and it will have the replay of every show, the show notes, and other resources available to you. So I'm just trying to help spread the good news, and I'm so grateful for you to be here. So let's jump right on in, because this topic is so applicable. Before I let my wonderful guest introduce herself, everybody listening, in the comment section or just out loud to yourself, who in your life have you known who has been affected by dementia? Did you have a grandparent, a spouse, a partner? Who in your life has been affected by dementia? Odds are you don't have to look very far. And I know Cheryl obviously has a really deep story about how her life was affected by dementia. So Cheryl, I think I'm just gonna pass the metaphorical mic over to you. Do you mind just introducing yourself to the group?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Spalding.
Awesome. And Cheryl, can you give us a little bit of background on how dementia came into your life?
I had no one that had dementia in my family, so I didn't really know much about it. I knew what dementia was, but didn't have a deep understanding of any of it. And when my husband David was 58, he was diagnosed with dementia. And at the time, the neurologist called it mild cognitive impairment. We saw many things that were not normal for David. He was a very successful businessman, and he could not put things together like directions, like any kind of cognitive skill that took more than 2 steps. And so he lost his job, and we went into the doctor, and we went through all the testing, and that's when we found out that he did have this mild cognitive impairment. So for the first couple of years, we just went with that and hoped it would either heal itself, or we would find out why. Was it a stroke? Was it an accident? Did he get hit on the head really hard? Any of those things? Well, those were all ruled out in David's case. And within the next 2 years, I demanded from our neurologist, what does David have? Where is this going? I said, I want to learn as much about it as I can so I can help him. And we were very upfront with each other and with other people. We didn't hide this at all. So his neurologist said David has early onset Alzheimer's. And he said he also has what we call Parkinsonism. So that's a debilitating disease, the Parkinsonism. They lose muscle mass, they lose strength, obviously, and pretty soon they can't walk, they're in a wheelchair, those kinds of things. So that's where we were at. We were in shock, totally. David was too young to have this happen to him. And we just had no idea where to go or what to do. So I started looking into what Alzheimer's was. And it's a slow death is what they call it, because there is no cure. Well, that didn't sit real well with either one of us. And David, because David was young and in very good shape, he had been a runner, he had been a racquetball player, softball player, all of those things. And we decided we'd just keep going on with what he could do until, we were pretty aware that he couldn't do those things anymore. So the first thing they tell you to do is stay active and be social. Big part of it is social. You want to keep your brain busy. You want to try to communicate with others as best you can. And so those were the things that he started doing yoga. He started playing pickleball. He had never played it before, but he was good at it until he couldn't do it anymore. Same with the yoga. We walked every day until that got very difficult also. Okay. So it was slow, only in that it took him 10 years from diagnosis to death. Okay. And so all of this is taking place during those times, those years, I should say. It got very difficult for David to communicate, but he wanted to. But he wanted to keep track of where I was all the time. If I went out of the house for any reason, he would come out and look around for me. And that gets to be a little bit disturbing, because we have people that are they wander. Bye. I see you later. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay. Bye, honey. Sorry. He calls me Gigi, great grandma. So back to our journey. David was he was the most kind and gentle man I had ever met in my life. And he continued to be that way throughout his illness. He never got angry with me. Some people aren't so lucky. Dementias, depending on what kind it is, and there are many different kinds of dementias. That's one thing that one of the first things they ask is, well, what is dementia? And, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
Right.
And the difference is Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. It includes frontal lobe dementia. It includes Lewy body dementia. Those are the three top ones: Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies, and frontal temporal lobe. But there are many others like it. And it takes time for the neurologist to figure out which one it is. And that comes from testing and behavior. So some people never quite know whether it was this or that,
Oh, wow.
But they were, yeah. So in the meantime, I'm trying to read everything I can. I joined a caregiver group within 3 years. So I was in a caregiver group 7 years, and I loved it. It was a plethora of information. They gave us books, they gave us connections, who to call, who to talk to. We went to a seminar or two, and those were things that helped me help me
Yeah.
understand it. Like I was doing something for this horrible disease that I was seeing him, taking him away from me.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And we will put a pin in that and come back to caregiver because I absolutely want to dive in deeper into that. But as we kind of look back at dementia, can you kind of put us into where you were mentally as you're starting to see some of those things take place? Like, what was it like as a wife to see your husband of so many years start to lose that?
It was horrible. It was very, oh, very sad.
Yeah.
And yet I tried to keep my enthusiasm and tried to keep my humor. And we would talk to each other. And I would tell him, well, I don't understand what that's supposed to mean, or do you understand me? I didn't ask him a lot about, do you, as he progressed, I would never say, do you know me? And finally one day in the very late stages, I asked him, do you know who I am? And he said, Mom. So I
Oh.
knew that he related me to someone he loved, but didn't quite know whether that was a
Mm.
mom or, and he didn't remember if we were married or not. One day he said to me, I think we should get married. I said, well, well, we are married. Isn't that great? And he said, well, yeah. So,
Oh.
so those are the kinds of things that threw me, that I wasn't quite ready for, no matter what. As far as his body diminishing and his mind, um, it was slow, but it was horrendous. It
Mm.
was very hard to um, believe that this disease could do so much to change a person.
Yeah. Well, I am so sorry. My heart just hurts for you again. Virtual hug coming your way.
Mhm.
I'm so sorry that you had to do that. I know I have, as you kind of said before, you didn't have any exposure to dementia. I fortunately
Mhm.
have not had it either, but I hear from folks that misnaming and not knowing who you are is really painful. So, is there
Mhm.
any kind of wisdom that for the person who's kind of experiencing that extreme dagger to the heart for the first time, what you would say to that person who just got feels just really sad in that moment?
I went to reading, and the more I understood the disease and what other people were going through, I read a book, and it is the best book out there, I think. It's called The 36-Hour Day, and it tells all kinds of things about the different stages of dementia and what you're looking at when you don't even know. A lot of the time, as a caregiver, you're guessing, is this what I think it is? Or am I overreacting?
Mm.
Or sometimes we even feel like we're losing it
Yeah.
and like it's catchy. And so, those are the kinds of things that we go to caregivers and everybody would say, do you get like that? Yes, I do. You're so overwhelmed trying to figure it all out and still
Mm.
be able to um, have some sort of a relationship with your
Right.
spouse or your family member or your friend, whoever it is.
Yeah, well, that's so well said. And I love the community that you have with the caregivers to be able to run that question of, is this normal by? That is so powerful. So I guess I kind of to go down that caregiver path, dementia is so ugly. And like you said, it affected his brain, his body. How did it affect you? What did your life all of a sudden start to look like?
I was totally involved with David, and I had been taking care of my little granddaughter at the time. And by age 3.5, 4, I couldn't watch her anymore because I
Oh.
had to put everything into what I was doing focused on David. In other words, I couldn't leave him alone in the house. He had to have someone here at all times.
Mm.
So that was me. And the, that basically was when I realized I was retired at the time, and I thought, boy, am I ever glad this happened when it did. But he lost his job. He was our main um, financial help, and I couldn't quite figure out what we were going to do there. So
Yeah.
I got a hold of an attorney, an elder care attorney, and he walked me through the steps that I needed to go through to get everything of mine and David's into my name, and I could be his power of attorney. And we did that within the first 2 years, and
Okay.
that really made me feel a little better. Not so much in control, but a little better. That I was able to say, okay, that part's done. You know.
Okay.
But as far as my feelings, I did um, a lot of, I would say, crying away from
Mm.
him, maybe when he was asleep.
Yeah.
So, and they tend to sleep a lot. They get very tired very easily. And if they do act normal, which they do, and you think, am I crazy? Why is he like this around his buddy, but he's like this when he is with me? And through talking about it and reading, I found that uh, they have a very small window of being able to act almost normal when they
Oh, wow.
see, and we tell them who this friend is,
Okay.
coming to visit, and he will act very normal. And then once the friend is gone, which is usually typically within 35 minutes to an hour, and then he would just be wiped out, and it would
Mm.
all come to spinning back around. So they do have moments of clarity for a while.
Yeah.
I would say for David, it was for about 8 years. He
Okay.
had those times when he could pull up his bootstraps and act like everything was fine, and he could smile, but not usually. Usually
Okay.
there's just this deadpan face.
Mm. Well, this is all. I am so excited to go back through and rewatch this as the replay and get all these notes down because you were giving out such good wisdom and information.
Mhm.
And so kind of you mentioned when people would come to visit David, maybe we take a
Mhm.
step back and kind of talk about that. What did people do while he was alive that was really helpful for both of you guys?
Well, it's not too much at first. People didn't really want to recognize it. People get very, oh gosh, they get very uncomfortable
Hmm.
around someone that has a brain disease, something that isn't going to get better. And my family had a very, very difficult time even recognizing that David was ill. And I said, well, if you could spend 24/7 with David, you would see those things. And I said, it's a gradual disease. It doesn't happen all at once. Thank
Hmm.
God, because you wouldn't even know what you were doing.
Yeah.
But and also it gives the caregiver time to come to grips with knowing that this is this is a disease that is not going to end well. So the grieving process kind of starts then,
Yeah.
and you start grieving for that person, even though they aren't gone. They're still there, but uh, they're no longer the person you know.
Hmm. Was that hard for your children?
My girls were good. My girls were good. They watched me, and they were very careful about how I was doing, and asked what they could do. And they came to visit, and they made him smile and brought the little kids, and that was fun.
Okay.
Um, but again, you would get so tired. One thing I did, we have a group of 16 of us that all get together for vacations, for cabins, for parties. And I decided to have one last Christmas party. We used to have them all the time. And so I said, okay, this year we're going to do Christmas party. And um, everybody came. And one of David's best friends came up to me and said, Cheryl, I know why you're doing this. And I just looked at him and he said, this will be the last one, won't it? And I said, yeah, it will. So, but they recognized that things were moving ahead, things were going down. So, and that's one of my favorite memories. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that. I'm kind of hopping all over. But
oh my gosh, no, this is wonderful. So when David was with his friends, were there things that others did that helped him in that? Did he enjoy visitors? Like, when I know it took a lot out of him.
Well, he enjoyed what he could understand.
Okay.
If he knew, he might float like in and out, like he wouldn't be able to call them by name. He wouldn't be able to do that. But I would say, David, look, your friend Bimo is here from Colorado. And I said, you used to work with Bimo and you played football in college with Bimo. And I would bring back memories. And then, and that's what you need to do. You need to help that person along. Don't ask them questions because they just get confused and then they feel bad and they get a little very anxious. Anxiety is one of the biggest things that I saw in David early on because he didn't know what was happening. But it continues as they get into their journey. Yeah. So the more that we can help as caregivers, the more that we can help them understand what's happening at that particular time, that's really good for them.
Is there etiquette for the visitor that you would recommend? Like if I'm visiting someone, is there something I should have on my radar or ways I should act?
No, just act like yourself.
Okay.
And tell him what's going on in your life or what's been funny, or guys that would come would just tell jokes and stories and he would just sit back and listen. And that way he didn't have to try to talk or perform or do anything, but I could tell he just loved it. So that's really something. Now, the one thing I did want to bring up about some that happens sometimes in families is they don't believe that this is really happening to the person. It's almost like they have blinders on. And so they aren't very supportive in that measure. And my family really came forward in about year 7.
Wow.
And that was when I had to put David into in a memory care home. And they kind of came out of the woodwork then and told me I was wrong, that things weren't that bad and he didn't need to be in a home.
Oh no.
And again, I said, and it was very hard for me to do that because I never dreamed I would do that, but I couldn't lift him anymore. I couldn't give him a shower very well. I'd fall into the shower with him and those kind of things. So it was real hard. And my daughter finally said, Mom, it's time for David to be in a home where they can care for him 24/7 and you can get some sleep.
Yeah.
So she kind of talked me into it, and I'll never regret it, ever. It was something that really had to happen. And I was able to help the caregivers there with David. I was there a lot. I would say 5 days out of 7, I was over there for more than 4 hours at a time. So, and he loved it that I would come. He didn't quite know who I was, but he knew he loved me and I loved him. So that was the feeling he got.
Yeah.
And I was able to really help others while I was over there too. I mean, there were so many people that needed just something. They needed a spoon instead of a fork, or they would like coffee, and I would pour coffee, and just little things that and they got to know me. So it was kind of like family, and it was good.
Oh, I'm over here crying. That is the most beautiful sentiment ever. And I think you're so right. We should never judge people for having to make those hard decisions. So thank you for that reminder of us just being like, you don't know what's going on at home. So never judge people for having to put folks in homes because that's just reality. And as we kind of wrap up our time here, it goes so fast. I could talk to you
Yeah.
forever. I would love to talk more about caregiving. And obviously, like
Mhm.
you said, you were having to bathe him, you were having to dress him. Could you
Mhm.
maybe talk a little bit more about what is it like to be a caregiver that the average person just doesn't understand?
I think it's the everyday little things that go on. It's washing them and shaving and yeah, clipping their nose hairs and all of these little things, clipping their toenails, giving them a rub down. And it's continuous. They sleep for maybe a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours, and hopefully not too much in the afternoon, so they can sleep all night. But I think most of it is it's just hands on all the time, hands on.
Yeah.
I loved that I didn't have to make 3 meals a day once David was in memory care. I loved to go over and sit with him when he was having his meals, and sometimes I would have my meals with him, and that worked out really great. So, but that was something that took up time, and I didn't like taking that kind of time. I would rather be sitting there with him, holding his hand, or
Yeah.
or giving him a haircut or whatever it was to do. But
Right. And how are ways that I know you mentioned earlier that caregiver group. So I think that is such a great
oh,
recommendation is like get connected to a group. I'll try in my email to put some of the resources in there for folks to find
that's
groups.
great.
But is there
Mine was
something
out.
like, yeah, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Mine was out in Waconia, and
Okay.
David went to a daycare out there for about 3.5 years. And then once he couldn't go there anymore because of incontinence and other things, that was then he stayed home. But I
Oh,
continued to go there for my caregiver meeting once a week, or once a I can't even remember if it was once a week or once a month. I think it was once a month. But yes, and I'm going now and helping people with what I learned from the whole
yeah.
journey.
What is like one thing that us non-caregivers can do to help a caregiver out?
I would say it was very hard for me to ask for help, uh, just like it was for you. It was I just couldn't think really well. I had a foggy brain most of the time from trying to figure out what was happening with David and how to deal with it. And I think people, simple things like bring a meal over.
Mm.
Bring a meal over in the evening, and here I had some extra of this. Don't make it like something big and special. Just I made this casserole. I thought of you. Um, oh gosh, I don't have a lot of or home outdoors to keep up because I live in an association, so they do all of that. Thank the Lord. And but for people that don't have that, it's coming over and raking leaves in the fall, or
Yeah.
just doing, and without being asked. That is
Mm.
the key. That is the key. I had a girlfriend that she came at least 3 times a month and sat with David and I over at his home, and just talked. She brought her puppy in, and they love the residents love the little dogs, so they were loving that. But that helps when I'm just sitting there and really not having anything or any. I have to do the talking. There's no back and forth. It's so nice to have someone come in and just sit and chat, and David can sit and listen, and
Oh,
that's what he would do. Um, so
that's
I would just recommend the easy things, the things that um, help, that just help.
Oh my gosh. Well, Cheryl, I could talk to you forever, but we're going to cut it there. So thank you so much. I'm so sorry for your loss, and we are so grateful for you to share your heartache and your lessons that you learned during those 10 years with us. So thank you so much for being here. We are just so grateful to you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Everybody watching, what did you think? In the comments section, let us know. Cheryl and I can go back through and look at them. And if you know somebody who is either a caregiver or they're experiencing dementia in their family for the first time, just tag them, share this message. This is one that is so important. And again, as Cheryl mentioned, we need to make sure people don't feel alone. And so this is going to be an awesome episode to pass on. So make sure you do it. And thank you guys again. I will see you next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.